Hello everyone, I am Douglas E. Welch and welcome back to another episode of In the Garden from A Gardener's Notebook. For more information on A Gardener's Notebook and everything else that I do, visit douglasewelch.com. Well, today in the garden we're continuing our irrigation retrofit project. I got a brand new electronic timer like the two you've seen me put in before. I've got some Ys to split stuff out, and I got some other parts, and we're going to retrofit the soaker hose that runs around the outside of our front garden. Now the fact is, I had taken two 50-foot soaker hoses, connected them together in the past, and frankly it didn't work very well. There's pressure issues. I'm guessing one end got really wet, the other end got very little. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to split it back into two hoses, hook them both to this timer, and get some automation going on here in the front garden again. So here's our water connection point. Here's again one of our old standard mechanical timers. Again, they work pretty well, and I'm probably going to end up repurposing these in other parts of the gardens, perhaps for containers where I just spend a little more attention on the pots. But we're going to take him off. What you see here is a little stub of a hose, regular hose, that's going to the first soaker in the bed itself, and that's just so I'm not watering my path here. Now what we're going to do is, you've seen these timers in previous videos, and these are electronic. They run on two AAA batteries. You set them for how often to turn on and how long to run once they turn on. They've been doing pretty darn well in the backyard, so I'm pretty excited to have it up here. I think it'll work really well. Now you notice here I only tighten that to hand tightness. Plastic parts are very susceptible to cracking or breaking if you over tighten them, so unless you really feel a need to, keep these little devils away from things, especially if they're plastic, because you might end up actually shattering it. So once we got that coupler on, we put the timer on itself and then use the compression fitting here to attach the timer to those, again hand tight. And then, because I'm going to be running two soaker hoses off of this faucet, I need to put a Y on here. So here is a Y that I actually salvaged from another installation on the other side of the house. We're not using it right now, so I figured I might as well put it back to purpose. A nice solid brass fitting. Now what I did do is I put a new washer in here, and it's always a good idea whenever you're reinstalling something, whether it's a hose like this or a Y like this, go ahead and throw a new washer in there. It'll keep your leaks to a minimum, and we all know that one of the biggest issues, of course, around here is keeping things from leaking. You don't want to be wasting water, especially on something like this where the water pressure is on all the time. It can leak around here. It can leak at any fitting before the timer. You don't want it leaking because that's just going to waste water. So there we go. We're going to take their existing first soaker hose. We're going to put it back on this side of the Y. Now one of the nice things too is this Y has flapper valves on it too, so if you wanted to run one then the other manually, you could do that. I know when I set up the soakers in the containers, which I'll show you in a upcoming container garden update, I did like that because I wasn't sure if the soaker hose was actually going to flood the containers, and I may needed to run them separately, but in this case I think we're going to be okay. So now on to actually retrofitting the other soaker hose, which is in the middle of the bed. So I'm going to have to run a new hose over there and connect up a separate hose line running that direction. Basically what happens is it allows the pressure to be equally distributed amongst the soaker hoses, and so both of them will work correctly where connected together. They just don't get enough pressure. So one of the first things to do here actually is to find the connector, and okay, there it is. It's been under this mulch for quite a while. So here's where the two soaker hoses join out. Now what I gotta do is, actually I can do that finger tight, good, I can just undo that, is I had to go and find one of the caps that originally came on the end of the soaker hose. So I was able to find that luckily. So what we're gonna do now is that hose you just saw me connect, that's connected to this soaker, and this soaker is gonna end right here. So now this one should function normally again. Then what we're going to do is, again, we're going to look at our washer here. That one's actually good. Sometimes you can just get away with just flipping it over too if it looks fine enough. And then we're going to attach, this is our new hose that we got. It's a fairly high-end hose. We got it on sale. It's got nice galvanized fittings on the end. Now, of course, this is just going to be lying across the garden here. So what we're probably going to do is end up burying this under the mulch eventually. It is the easiest way to extend this irrigation right now without going through the trouble of putting PVC and stuff back into the ground. The interesting thing about using PVC in this garden is that it is almost assuredly going to be eaten and broken by tree roots. We just have too many tree roots in the area, and it tends to crack it up, and it's really a pain to have to dig it up and replace it. So we've actually removed as much of the PVC as possible as far as our irrigation is. So there's our new hose connector. We're gonna just check out the soaker as it's going across the rest of the bed here, and then we're gonna connect this hose back up to our new timer and test everything out. Okay, so here we are. We're gonna take our new hose. We're gonna, again, hand tighten it down here. We may see. We'll see if we get any leaks here now. Now, here's our electron timer. Now, they do a very good job of protecting the electronics from the water. This is a probably 10 or 12 threaded dome that goes on here with a huge gasket here, and it seems to work pretty well. So what we're gonna do is we're actually just gonna say, we're gonna turn on the water a little bit, because again, with soaker hoses, you don't need a lot of pressure. We're going to just simply, let's say, reset, turn it on, and in a few seconds, we should hear the valve turn on and open up. It always makes me think it isn't going to do it until it doesn't. You hear the water going out. Okay, so now it's pressurizing the soaker hoses. And we're getting drip over there on the soaker. And then we just simply kind of run our hands along here, here, here. The easiest way to see if you've got a leak sometimes is just run your finger and let it dangle off the edge. If you get a drip of water that runs down your finger onto the ground, you know you've got a leak there. And actually, surprise, surprise, thank goodness for small favors, it looks like things are working pretty darn well. So now we're going to walk around, check out both ends of the soaker, and make sure everything's working okay on that end. And here you can see an up-close picture of the soaker here, and you'll see that it is weeping. Now what we're going to do is we're going to walk along it, pull it all up, and make sure that it isn't plugged at any point or has a gaping hole or anything at some point, just again to make sure we're not wasting water in one area over another. And this is why you check everything after you've installed something new. Sure enough, at some time in the past when this was not being used, we probably hit this with a shovel at some point, almost cut it completely in half. Now, do not despair, of course. I can go and get a 2-part connector to connect the 2 ends of this hose together and return it to service. I've actually got an entire video online about repairing just this situation when a squirrel chewed through some of my soaker hoses before. Now, of course, you may ask yourself, why go through all this trouble of retrofitting the irrigation system? Surely there's enough water or rain or whatever, or surely they'll simply survive on their own. My typical method of benign neglect. Well, this is a perfect example of why retrofitting the irrigation system with these automatic timers is really starting to pay off. These roses, first of all, don't get enough sun, so they've always kind of struggled. They get kind of leggy. But since I've had the new watering system installed here, they're growing vigorously. They're throwing off blooms. There's actually some very pretty blooms down inside here. We'll see if I can get a shot of those just opening up down there. That's why we're taking the time to work on this project and make it work as well as we can, because simply by removing the issues of inattention on my part and letting the watering happen on its own, we get such great results like this.